Thunder boomed across the sky, rattling the windows of Miranda Evans' battered sedan as it wound deeper into the forest. The headlights barely pierced the swirling fog. Rain pelting the windshield like thrown gravel. Miranda's hands shook on the steering wheel, knuckles white, jaw clenched, eyes wild in the glow of the dashboard. In the back seat, her daughter Lila sat perfectly still, clutching a worn teddy bear and her small blue backpack, heart pounding so loud she was sure her mother could hear it. Miranda pulled the car to a sudden stop, tires skidding in the mud. The forest pressed in, gnarled branches clawing at the glass. Lila watched as her mother stared straight ahead, breathing hard, mumbling to herself under the crash of rain. Without warning, Miranda swung open the car door, stumbling into the storm. The cold hit Lila like a slap as her mother yanked open the back door. "Get out, Lila." Lila's lips trembled. She clung to her bear. The world outside was a wall of darkness and noise. She didn't move. "I said get out." The words sliced the air. Lila slid off the seat, shoes sinking into the mud. The wind ripped at her hair, rain soaking through her sweatshirt in seconds. She blinked against the sting, staring up at her mother, eyes pleading. Miranda's face twisted, rain streaked with tears, or maybe it was the other way around. She pressed the backpack into Lila's arms, then stepped back. "You'll be fine. I just can't." And then she was gone. Door slamming, engine coughing to life. The red taillights cut a bloody line through the trees, shrinking, vanishing, swallowed by the night. For a moment, Lila just stood there, too stunned to cry. The roar of the storm filled her ears. She turned in a slow circle, trees looming all around, leaves thrashing like frightened animals. Her teeth chattered. Water dripped from her hair, pooled inside her shoes. She tried to call out, but her voice was lost in the wind. The forest felt alive, watching her, waiting. She thought of home, the tiny apartment, the faded quilt, the smell of her mother's shampoo. Was this a dream? She pinched her arm hard. No. She was awake, her hands fumbled with the backpack. She dug out her flashlight, thumbed it on. The weak beam flickered, showing only ghostly trunks and tangled roots. Every shadow seemed to move. She hugged her teddy to her chest, heart racing. "Mom, please!" Lightning split the sky, and for an instant the woods were lit up, sharp and cruel. Something crashed in the underbrush. Lila froze. She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. Her fingers gripped the bear tighter. Hours seemed to pass, or maybe it was only minutes. The rain grew colder, slicing through her thin clothes. Her legs ached. She huddled beneath a twisted oak, trying to stay dry, but water poured down her back. The ground squelched beneath her, cold seeping into her bones. She buried her face in her bear's fur. That was when she heard it, a soft snort, a heavy breath. Something big was moving through the storm. Lila pressed the flashlight to her chest, barely daring to breathe. Leaves rustled, hooves thudded softly on the soaked earth. A shape materialized out of the rain. For a heartbeat, Lila thought it was a ghost, pale and shining, mane whipping like silver threads in the wind. It was a horse, a wild one, white as moonlight, muscles rippling beneath his soaked coat. His eyes caught the beam of her flashlight and glowed deep and unafraid. Lila held still, not daring to blink. The Mustang stood tall, water streaming from his sides, breathing slow and steady. He took a step closer, then another, until his breath fogged the air between them. Lila's heart hammered. The horse lowered his head, nostrils flaring, sniffing the air. His mane brushed her cheek, soft as feathers. Lila shivered, but not from fear. The storm faded into the background, the thunder less frightening now, The Mustang's presence filled the dark with something fierce, something protective. The wind howled, a branch snapped, and Lila flinched. The Mustang shifted, placing himself between her and the woods, massive body a living shield. He stamped a hoof, shaking water from his mane. Lila reached out, fingers trembling, and touched his neck. The warmth surprised her. He smelled like rain and wild grass. She buried her face in his mane and let the tears come, silent and shuddering. The horse stood perfectly still. For the first time since her mother had driven away, Lila didn't feel alone. The night dragged on, but Lila stayed pressed against the Mustang's side. His body heat seeped into her, chased away the chill. Each time the wind screamed, the horse simply stood his ground, steady and strong. Lila whispered to him. Nonsense words, old lullabies, things she hadn't told anyone but her bear. The horse flicked his ears, listening. Lightning flashed again, showing them together. A tiny girl and a wild Mustang, side by side against the storm. The rain beat down, but Lila clung to the warmth, and the fear faded. Just a little. She closed her eyes, whispering one last word. Please stay. The horse did not move, and outside the storm raged on. Rain hammered the leaves overhead, drowning out every sound except thunder and the frantic beating of Lila's heart. The white Mustang stayed close, his body blocking the worst of the wind. Lila pressed herself into his warmth, shivering beneath her soaked clothes, her tiny fists still clutching her teddy bear. For a long time she couldn't do anything but stare at the shifting shadows, listening to the wild night and whispering quiet promises to herself that she would not cry. The hours crawled by. Every time Lila's eyes grew heavy, the wind shrieked, or lightning clawed across the sky, jerking her awake. The Mustang, Whisper she decided he must be called, stood as steady as a statue, his side pressed against her shoulder. Each time she trembled, he nudged her gently, as if saying, I'm here. She looked up at him and tried a weak smile, though her lips barely moved. She spoke to him in whispers, her voice hoarse from cold and fear. I don't know if you understand me, but you're all I have, you know. The Mustang's ear flicked, his tail lashed at the rain. Lila's imagination spun wild. Maybe he was a magical horse, sent by her grandma in heaven to watch over her. Or maybe he was just lonely, like her. She closed her eyes, pressing her cheek to his warm neck, and tried to believe she would see the sun again. Far away, a search was already beginning. At the edge of the forest, Lila's Aunt Carla paced the living room in her flannel pajamas, phone clutched tight, panic sharpening her every word. She's not here. I've looked everywhere, her room, the yard, the park. Miranda's gone too. Her car isn't in the lot. The police dispatcher tried to calm her, but Carla's voice only grew more desperate. You don't understand. Lila's just a child. She wouldn't wander off on her own. As word spread, the town's quiet hum turned into a storm of its own. Tomas Ramirez, the local rancher with broad shoulders and gentle eyes, was one of the first to hear. He grabbed his raincoat, flashlight, and a rope, calling out to his teenage son to saddle their fastest horse. We don't wait for daylight. We go now. Back in the forest, Lila's limbs began to ache from cold and exhaustion. Her teeth chattered so loud she thought they might crack. She tried curling into a ball, but mud oozed around her sneakers, soaking her through. She was so tired. She wanted to sleep, but fear kept her awake. The Mustang shifted again, lowering himself to the ground beside her, legs folding gracefully beneath him. For a moment, Lila just stared, hardly believing it. You're not leaving me, are you? The horse huffed, breath warm against her hands. Lila inched closer, tucking herself against his side. She could feel his heart beating, steady and slow, like a drum in the darkness. "I'm scared. I want my mom." The words faded into the storm. Whisper leaned into her, his chin resting gently on her shoulder. It was enough. Lila closed her eyes and finally slept. Dreams full of galloping hooves and sunlight on wild grass. Elsewhere, the search party grew, flashlights bobbing through the trees, voices calling Lila's name. Carla's heart broke with each unanswered shout. She blamed herself for not seeing the signs, for not protecting her niece, for trusting Miranda when she should have done more. "Please, let me find her. I'll never forgive myself." Tomas moved with quiet urgency, scanning every trail, checking muddy banks for footprints too small to belong to deer. His own daughter had died young, and he would not let another child be lost in these woods. He called out, voice booming, "Lila, we're here, you're not alone!" The storm refused to let up, wind slapping branches against faces, rain turning paths into rivers of mud. Every so often, a volunteer thought they heard something, but it was only the wind or the creak of old trees. Still, they pushed deeper, refusing to give up. Back in the clearing, Lila awoke to a sharp crack of thunder. She jerked upright, disoriented, until Whisper's steady presence calmed her. The horse nuzzled her cheek, breath warm, eyes deep and knowing. "Thank you. I don't want to be alone." She reached into her backpack, hands numb, and pulled out a granola bar. Her stomach twisted with hunger. She broke it in half, offering a piece to Whisper. He sniffed, then accepted it delicately, his lips brushing her palm. Lila giggled, the first real laugh since she'd arrived. "You like that, huh? Maybe you're hungry too." Lightning flashed again. Lila flinched, but the Mustang didn't move. She began telling him stories, made-up adventures about brave little girls and magical horses. Her voice was weak, but Whisper listened, as if every word mattered. As the night dragged on, Lila felt the fear shrinking, replaced by something else. Hope. The horse was her guardian, and as long as he stood beside her, the dark could not win. "We'll make it through. We have to." Far off, a dog barked. The searchers moved closer. The storm finally began to ease, thunder rolling off into the hills. Lila huddled against Whisper, eyes growing heavy once more. "Don't leave. Please stay until morning." The horse did not move. Dawn was still far away, but hope had returned, burning small and stubborn in the heart of one lost, brave little girl. When Lila next opened her eyes, the world was a softer place. The night had begun to lift, the first blue hints of morning crawling between the trees. Her body ached, her fingers stiff with cold, but her mind felt lighter, as if she had crossed through something terrible and survived. Whisper, the white Mustang, was still there. His head was low, grazing quietly on dew-soaked grass just a few steps away. Lila blinked, half afraid he'd been a dream, but the warmth on her side, the marks in the mud, all told her he was real. Her stomach grumbled. She fumbled in her backpack for a second granola bar, nibbling at it with numb fingers. Whisper raised his head at the sound, ears forward, nostrils flaring. Lila smiled. "You're hungry too, huh?" She broke off another piece, holding it out. The horse approached, slow and careful, accepting her offering with a gentle touch. The fear she'd felt last night was gone, replaced by something almost like trust. Dawn crept in, soft and silver, drawing a thin mist across the forest floor. Birds began to call from high branches. Lila took a shaky breath. Everything felt different, not safe exactly, but no longer impossible. Whisper nudged her backpack, then nudged her hand. He stepped away, looking back, head turned as if waiting for her to follow. "You want me to come with you?" Her voice was rough, but Whisper's answer was clear. He walked a few paces, then stopped, glancing over his shoulder. Lila scrambled to her feet, legs wobbly but determined, and trailed after him through the tangled underbrush. He led her toward a narrow stream, hidden behind a fallen tree. The water sparkled in the early light. Lila dropped to her knees, cupping water in her hands, gulping it down. It tasted fresh, icy cold. She splashed her face, shivering at the shock, and laughed again, louder this time. "Thank you, Whisper." The Mustang drank beside her, every movement graceful. Lila watched him, fascinated. His mane gleamed where the sunlight touched it, and scars on his shoulder told of old battles. He was wild, and yet he'd saved her. She wanted to thank him properly, to show she understood. Her fingers found the red ribbon in her hair, a birthday gift from her aunt. With careful hands, she tied it into Whisper's tangled mane. "Now you're my friend, okay?" She stroked his neck. "Promise you'll remember me, even if I have to go home." Elsewhere, the search had not stopped. Aunt Carla's eyes were raw from tears, her voice gone hoarse from shouting Lila's name. She moved through the woods with relentless purpose, flashlight and hope the only things keeping her upright. Regret gnawed at her with every step. I should have seen the signs. I should have been there. The pain in her chest threatened to swallow her whole, but she kept moving, desperate for a sign. Tomas Ramirez searched on horseback, his broad silhouette passing through thickets and shallow streams. He checked every animal trail, every patch of broken brush, calling Lila's name until it seemed the trees themselves might answer. The whole town felt Carla's pain. News spread fast, as it always did in small places, first as rumor, then as urgent truth. Volunteers joined the search, neighbors, ranchers, teachers from the local school, all drawn by the same need to find the little girl lost in the storm. No one slept. No one gave up. As the sun crept higher, Lila grew braver. Whisper let her lean against him as she walked. Together they made a strange pair, wild horse and shivering child. But the woods, so frightening at night, seemed almost magical by morning. They reached a clearing where the sun streamed in golden ribbons. Lila spun in the light, arms out, letting herself forget the fear for just a moment. Whisper tossed his mane and nickered softly, as if sharing her joy. But the moment could not last. A branch snapped in the distance. Lila froze. She ducked behind Whisper, heart thudding, but instead of danger she heard voices, human voices, calling, desperate. "Lila! Lila, can you hear me?" She ran to the edge of the clearing, hope surging. "Aunt Carla, I'm here." The woods exploded with movement. Carla burst from the trees, face streaked with tears and dirt, arms outstretched. She fell to her knees, gathering Lila into a shaking embrace, sobbing into her hair. "Oh God, I thought I'd lost you." Lila buried her face in Carla's shoulder, finally letting herself cry. Whisper watched from a distance, tail flicking, wary but unafraid. Tomas followed close behind, his hat in his hands. "You found her! Thank God!" Carla clung to Lila as if she might vanish again. "Never, never again. I'm so sorry, Lila. It's okay, I'm okay. Whisper kept me safe." Carla turned to the Mustang, amazement and gratitude mingling in her eyes. "Is that a wild horse?" Lila nodded, wiping her nose. "His name is Whisper. He's my friend." Tomas approached slowly, hands open. Whisper regarded him, then, just for a moment, allowed the man to stroke his muzzle. In the sunlight, in the middle of the wild, a new family was beginning to form, built not just of blood, but of hope, courage, and a bond that would change all their lives. The worst was over, but this was only the beginning. The clearing held its breath as Lila and Carla clung to each other, rain-soaked and trembling, but finally together. The dawn had grown into full morning, painting the world with gold and green, dew shimmering on every leaf. For the first time since the storm began, the woods felt less like a cage and more like a place of second chances. Tomas stood a respectful distance from the reunited pair, eyes resting on the wild Mustang. Whisper's sides still heaved from the long night, but he was alert, muscles tense, watching every move. Lila, sensing his worry, broke free from Carla's arms and ran to the Mustang's side. "It's okay, Whisper. They're good people. They came to help." Carla wiped her eyes and stepped forward, hands open in a gesture of peace. "He really kept you safe all night?" Lila nodded, voice small but sure. "He stayed with me, all through the rain. I wasn't scared when he was there." Carla blinked back tears. "We're so grateful, sweetheart. So grateful." Tomas removed his hat, approaching Whisper with the quiet assurance of a man who'd spent his life among horses. He spoke in gentle tones, every word more for the animal's comfort than the human's. "You're a brave one, aren't you?" He reached out, letting Whisper catch his scent, waiting for permission before laying a hand on the stallion's neck. Whisper's ears twitched, but he didn't flinch. A silent understanding passed between them. Carla gathered Lila close again. "Let's get you home, honey. We'll make you warm, get you something to eat." Lila hesitated, glancing at Whisper, then at Tomas. "He should come with us. He saved me. Please, Aunt Carla. He's my friend." Tomas exchanged a look with Carla. "A wild Mustang isn't easy to bring in, but I think this one's earned a little trust." With patient coaxing, Tomas fashioned a makeshift lead from his rope. Whisper accepted it, barely, walking alongside Lila as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Carla and Tomas guided the way, keeping a respectful distance so as not to spook the stallion. The walk back through the woods felt different. The birds sang louder, the air sweeter. Lila leaned on Whisper, whispering stories only he could hear. Her eyes were tired, but her smile was real. Carla's hand never left Lila's shoulder, grounding them both. Tomas kept a careful eye on the Mustang, every step a silent promise that nothing bad would happen as long as he was there. The rescue party had grown at the forest's edge. Neighbors and searchers gasped as Lila emerged, hand resting on Whisper's mane. Someone cheered. Someone else wept. Carla wanted to thank them all, but words failed. In that moment, she just wanted to take her niece home, close every distance that had ever grown between them. They drove straight to Tomas's ranch, an expanse of rolling hills and weathered fences just beyond town. Tomas's son opened the gate wide, eyes wide at the sight of the white Mustang trotting in step with Lila. Lila's boots squelched through the mud as she led Whisper into a spacious corral near the barn. The stallion lifted his head, sniffing the air, nostrils flaring. He circled once, then settled, tail flicking. Lila leaned against the fence, exhausted, but her gaze never left her friend. Inside the ranch house, Carla wrapped Lila in a thick quilt, hands shaking as she poured hot chocolate into a mug. Lila sipped, sighing as warmth returned to her fingers. Carla stroked her hair, voice trembling. "You're safe now. I promise. You'll never be alone again." Lila closed her eyes. "Thank you, Aunt Carla." From the window, she could see Whisper in the corral, head high, watching every movement with calm intensity. Tomas joined her, wiping mud from his boots. He's a good one, that horse. Smart, loyal. I've seen plenty of wild Mustangs, but I've never seen one act like that before. Lila nodded. He's special. I think he's meant to be here. Tomas smiled, lines deepening around his eyes. Maybe he is. Maybe we all are. That afternoon, news spread quickly. The lost girl was home, thanks to a miracle Mustang. Neighbors stopped by the ranch to leave casseroles, blankets, and cards. Some brought carrots and apples for Whisper, leaving them by the fence. Others simply stood by the gate, whispering prayers of thanks. As the sun set, painting the sky in fiery streaks, Carla tucked Lila into bed with her teddy bear and the quilt from home. Sleep now, baby. You're safe, I promise. Down in the corral, Whisper stood silent watch, mane lifting in the breeze, eyes fixed on the house. Tomas tossed him a blanket, rubbing his neck. You did good, old boy. You're part of this family now. Night settled over the ranch. For the first time in a long while, it felt like hope had come to stay. By sunrise, the story of Lila and the white Mustang had already become local legend. News spread like wildfire. A little girl lost in the wildest part of the forest, a night of thunder and fear, and a wild horse that stood guard through it all. Photos of Lila's tired smile and the striking white Mustang, mane tangled with a red ribbon, started showing up on social media. Within hours, neighbors were stopping at the ranch to catch a glimpse of the horse that everyone was calling a miracle. But admiration didn't last long before doubts crept in. The town was small, and in small towns, stories changed with every retelling. Some people came to the ranch with apples and carrots, smiling and snapping photos over the fence. Others hung back, whispering behind their hands, eyes narrowed in suspicion. Carla noticed it first. She was in the grocery store, loading up on soup and medicine for Lila, when a woman she knew from church stopped her near the canned goods. I heard about that horse, Carla. Is it really safe keeping a wild animal so close to children? Carla straightened her shoulders, forcing a calm she didn't feel. He saved Lila's life. He's not dangerous. The woman pursed her lips. But wild animals are unpredictable. You know how folks get when they're scared. By the time Carla made it to the checkout, the mood had shifted. She overheard two men debating near the magazine rack. That horse should be relocated. For everyone's safety. What if it gets loose? You're missing the point. That animal's a hero. The girl would have died without him. Carla left the store with her heart pounding. It was clear. The whole town had opinions, and not everyone agreed. Back at the ranch, Tomas tried to keep Whisper's presence as low-key as possible. He moved the Mustang to a bigger corral out of view from the main road, warning his son not to let strangers get too close. Lila watched all this with wide, worried eyes. Why are people mad at Whisper? He didn't do anything wrong. Tomas knelt by her side, voice gentle. Sometimes folks are afraid of what they don't understand. But that doesn't mean we stop doing what's right. Lila stroked Whisper's neck, braiding the red ribbon tighter. I don't want him to go away. He's my best friend. That afternoon, the local sheriff drove up in a dust-streaked cruiser. His arrival sent a ripple through the ranch. Nobody missed the way Carla's face tightened, or the way Tomas moved protectively between Lila and the corral. Sheriff Albright took off his hat, rubbing his temples. I need to talk to you about the Mustang. Some people are worried, and the town council's been asking questions. Carla braced herself. We'll keep him contained. He's not a threat. He's part of the family now. The sheriff sighed. Look, I believe what you're saying, But public safety's my job. There's talk of relocating him, maybe to a sanctuary out west. Lila's eyes filled with tears. No, please don't take him away. He's the only one who understands me. Tomas's voice was calm but firm. Sheriff, you know this horse saved Lila's life. He's not dangerous. Give us a chance to prove it. Sheriff Albright hesitated, looking at Lila, then at the silent, regal horse watching from the corral. He nodded, but his words hung heavy. I'll buy you some time, but the council's meeting Friday. You should be ready to speak. The moment the sheriff drove away, Carla sat on the porch steps, burying her face in her hands. What are we going to do? If they take Whisper away, it'll break her heart. Tomas rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We stand together, like a family. We tell them the truth. But the day's tension hadn't finished. As dusk colored the sky, an old sedan screeched into the drive. Miranda's battered car, the door swung open. Lila froze, clutching her teddy bear as her mother stumbled out, wild-eyed and desperate. Where's my daughter? You can't keep her from me. Carla's breath caught in her throat, but she stepped forward, standing between Miranda and Lila. Miranda, you left her in the woods. She could have died. Miranda's voice was raw, defensive. I made a mistake. She's still my child. You have no right. Tomas moved closer, jaw tight, eyes locked on Miranda. You need to leave, Miranda. The sheriff's been called. Miranda glared at all of them, tears mixing with rain. I'm taking her home. I'll fight you. Just wait and see. She got back in the car, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled, and sped off, her anger trailing behind like smoke. For a long while, no one spoke. Carla wrapped Lila in her arms, Tomas silent beside them, Whisper watching from his corral. The ranch felt less like a haven and more like a battlefield. The night settled in, uneasy and restless. The community was divided. The threat of losing Whisper loomed, and now Miranda's shadow hung over them all. But in the hush that followed, Lila found Whisper's eyes in the dark. He lifted his head, steady and calm. We're not giving up. Not now. And for the first time, she believed it. Friday arrived with a chill wind sweeping over the town, the kind that seemed to reach through windows and rattle the bones of anyone caught unprepared. Lila woke before sunrise, curled beneath the heavy ranch quilt, clutching her bear and staring at the shadows painting her ceiling. Downstairs, Carla's voice was a low murmur, tense and steady. She'd been up all night with Tomas, pacing, planning, holding back the worry for Lila's sake. The courthouse sat at the center of town, an old brick building with a clock tower and doors that groaned when you opened them. People gathered on the steps. Neighbors, teachers, church friends, reporters hoping to catch a glimpse of the Miracle Mustang's family. Lila clung to Carla's hand, Tomas at her other side. The three of them pressed together like a small, fragile army. Inside, the room was cold and bright. Miranda was already there, her eyes rimmed with red, a lawyer in a sharp suit at her side. She glanced at Lila only once, then looked away. Carla's own lawyer, a kind, tired woman named Miss Green, patted Carla's shoulder and squeezed Lila's hand. The judge entered, a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a voice that commanded quiet. The case began. Miranda's lawyer spoke first, painting Miranda as a struggling mother who'd made a single mistake, someone who needed a second chance, not punishment. He accused Carla and Thomas of exploiting Lila's story, calling their ranch unsafe because of the wild Mustang. My client only wants her daughter back. She's deeply sorry for what happened. This is a family matter, not a spectacle for the whole county. Miranda nodded, tears running silently down her cheeks. Miss Green stood next. She spoke slowly, clearly, never raising her voice. Your Honor, Lila's safety is our only concern. She was left alone in a dangerous storm. If not for the actions of Carla Evans and Tomas Ramirez, and yes, a remarkable Mustang, this child would not be with us today. Lila listened, stomach tight, heart fluttering. She glanced out the high window, searching for a sign of hope. There, in the parking lot across the street, stood Whisper, silent and tall, his coat almost glowing in the weak morning light. Tomas's son was with him, hand on the rope. Whisper's ears flicked, as if listening for Lila's voice, eyes locked on the courthouse window. Lila pressed her face to the glass. He's here. He came for me. Testimony began. Neighbors described Lila's night in the woods, the way Whisper had stood between her and the storm, how he'd allowed himself to be led home, gentle as any ranch horse. Teachers spoke about Lila's spirit, her quiet bravery, the way she'd bloomed since coming to the ranch. The town doctor confirmed she'd arrived at the hospital shivering and hungry, but unhurt thanks to that remarkable animal. Even the sheriff stood up, hat in hand. In my 20 years, I've never seen anything like it. That horse saved her, and these folks did right by her. Miranda's lawyer pressed hard. He called Carla inexperienced, Tomas reckless. He tried to argue that Lila would always be haunted by that night if she didn't return to her mother. He questioned whether the ranch was safe with a wild horse living so close. Carla's hands shook as she answered, but she never flinched. I'd give anything to protect her. She'll never be alone again. Not as long as I'm breathing. Lila was called to the stand. The judge's voice softened, inviting her to sit on the tall wooden chair. Can you tell me how you feel about where you're living, Lila? She gripped her bear, eyes darting to Carla and Tomas, then to Miranda, who watched her with a hunger that hurt to see. I like living at the ranch. I feel safe there. Aunt Carla takes care of me. So does Tomas. And Whisper. He's not scary. He's my friend. The judge leaned forward. And your mother? Lila hesitated. Sometimes she gets sad. I don't think she meant to hurt me, but I was so scared that night. She looked down, a tear tracing her cheek. The courtroom was silent. For a moment, only the clock could be heard ticking, the air thick with emotion. When the testimonies finished, the judge asked if there was anything else. Tomas stood, voice deep and steady. Your Honor, families come in all shapes. Blood, yes, but also love, trust. Lila has found both here. We're not perfect, but we'll fight for her, every day. Miranda broke down at last, sobs racking her shoulders. Her lawyer tried to comfort her, but she shook her head, muttering to herself. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Whisper stood patient as ever, children reaching through the fence to stroke his mane. Some adults watched with suspicion, but most smiled, murmuring about the bond between girl and horse. Inside, the judge called for a recess. Carla and Tomas hugged Lila, who pressed her face to Thomas's coat, whispering, I want to stay here. Please don't let them take me away. Carla knelt, voice rough with feeling. I won't let you go, not ever. By sunset, the courtroom filled again for the verdict. The judge's words were careful, deliberate. This is not an easy decision, but the child's welfare comes first. Temporary custody will remain with Carla Evans, pending further review and counseling for Miss Miranda Evans. The court will review the horse's situation separately, but for now, he will stay at the ranch, under Tomas Ramirez's care. Relief crashed over Carla and Tomas. Miranda was led from the courtroom, shoulders shaking, her future uncertain. Lila pressed her face to the glass one more time. Whisper lifted his head, mane dancing in the breeze. The battle wasn't over, but for now, hope had won another day. Night returned to the ranch, restless and heavy. A summer storm rolled in, thunder growling far beyond the hills, the wind lashing through the oaks that bordered Tomas's land. Carla double-checked every window, tested the locks, tucked Lila into bed with an extra blanket, and lingered at the door, uneasy. She could feel the tension, like static on her skin. Something was coming. Out in the corral, Whisper pawed the ground, head high, mane lifting in the gusts. The other horses stayed near the barn, but Whisper stood watch, eyes fixed on the shadows at the edge of the property. Lila lay awake, listening to the wind, hand clutching her bear, eyes on the strip of moonlight across her ceiling. The first crash of thunder jolted her upright. For a moment, the world was only sound and darkness. Then, above the howl of the wind, she heard another noise. Something out of place. Gravel crunching, a car door shutting. She tiptoed to the window. Headlights cut across the yard, briefly illuminating the silhouette of Miranda as she crept toward the house, rain plastering her hair to her cheeks. Lila's heart twisted. She pressed her face to the glass, torn between hope and dread. Downstairs, Carla and Tomas heard the same sounds. Carla's breath caught. "Tomas, she's back." Tomas grabbed his phone, whispering, "I'll call the sheriff. Stay with Lila." But Miranda was desperate, her movements frantic. She reached the side door, jiggling the handle, then tried the windows, peering inside with wild, pleading eyes. When she found everything locked, she circled the house, her footsteps squelching in the mud. Lila's room was at the back. She flinched as her mother's shadow appeared outside the window. Miranda tapped the glass, voice muffled by the storm. "Lila, open up, baby. Please. We have to go." Lila backed away, hugging her bear tight. "I can't. I don't want to." The tapping grew more urgent, turning to banging. The wind howled, thunder booming so close the glass rattled. Carla rushed in, scooping Lila into her arms, whispering, "I've got you. I'm right here." They heard Whisper scream, a sharp, wild sound that cut through the storm. Outside, the Mustang charged the fence, nostrils flared, eyes burning with determination. Miranda spun toward the noise, slipping in the mud, her hands shaking. Tomas threw open the back door, flashlight in one hand, the other dialing the sheriff. "Miranda, stop! The police are on their way. Leave now!" But Miranda was past reasoning, tears streaming down her face, voice breaking with every word. "She's my daughter. I need her. You can't keep her from me." She dashed for the corral, determined to cut through and reach the house faster. Whisper moved to block her, hooves thundering, body between Miranda and the gate. He lowered his head, snorting, muscles bunched and ready. Rain sheeted down, lightning splitting the sky above his white coat. Miranda stumbled, desperate. "Get out of my way!" She tried to run past him, but Whisper sidestepped, pressing her back, forcing her away from the fence. She slapped at his side, screaming, but he would not budge. Every time she tried, he blocked her, his body an immovable wall. Lila watched from the window, shaking. "He's protecting us. He knows." Tomas ran toward Miranda, dodging a fallen branch, Carla close behind. "Enough! Miranda, stop! Let us help you!" Miranda collapsed in the mud, sobbing, finally defeated. "I don't know what to do. I just want her back. I'm so tired." Carla dropped to her knees beside her, voice soft but unyielding. "You need help, Miranda, not just for Lila, but for yourself." Sirens pierced the night, blue lights spinning through the rain. Sheriff Albright and 2 deputies hurried from their cruiser, umbrellas forgotten as they raced to the scene. Tomas pulled Miranda gently to her feet, mud streaking her dress, face crumpled and lost. Let's go inside. Get you warm. Talk this through. Miranda didn't resist. For the first time, she allowed herself to lean on Tomas. Tears spent. The sheriff stepped in, nodding at Whisper, whose breath steamed in the cold air. That horse just saved a lot of trouble tonight. Again. Lila and Carla watched from the porch. Lila's heart breaking for her mother but filled with gratitude for everyone standing with her. Carla squeezed her close. You're safe now, I promise. Inside, Miranda finally confessed. Her struggles, her fear, the darkness she couldn't fight alone. She didn't argue when the sheriff spoke of treatment, not jail. She nodded, defeated, but maybe for the first time willing to try. The storm began to fade. Whisper shook himself off, standing tall and proud, his coat gleaming in the porch light. Tomas stroked his neck, voice steady. You're a hero, boy. I don't care what anyone says. In the early hours, as dawn hinted on the horizon, Lila drifted to sleep. Her family gathered close, Whisper standing guard beneath her window. The worst had passed, but the echoes of that night would shape them all, and in the silence that followed the storm, the whole town seemed to understand. Bravery came in many forms, but love and sacrifice could tame even the wildest hearts. The days after the storm felt gentler, as if the world itself was relieved to let the sun shine again. Lila awoke to the soft clatter of pans in the kitchen, Carla humming a tune she barely remembered from her own childhood. The air was different now, lighter, filled with hope, though the ache of what they'd survived was still tender under the surface. That morning, the courthouse meeting room was filled, but this time the mood was calm, almost expectant. Carla sat at the long oak table, one arm wrapped around Lila, while Tomas took a seat beside them. Across the table, Miranda sat with her lawyer, her face pale but her posture less brittle. She seemed smaller, quieter, no longer driven by the wild desperation that had carried her through the storm. The judge's words were careful but compassionate, his eyes never leaving Lila's. After reviewing the events of the last weeks, the testimony from every witness, and the recommendations of all involved, this court finds that the best interests of Lila Evans will be served in the custody of her aunt, Carla Evans, with Mr. Tomas Ramirez as legal guardian. Miranda Evans will not face criminal charges, provided she enters and completes a mental health treatment program and maintains supervised visitation as determined by her care team. Miranda bowed her head. There were no outbursts, only tears, a strange, gentle surrender. For the first time, she seemed to accept that help was not just for Lila, but for herself as well. Lila squeezed Carla's hand, looking from the judge to her mother. Will I see you again, Mama? Miranda nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Yes, sweetheart, I promise. And this time I'll be the mom you deserve. The judge smiled softly, then turned to Tomas. And what of the Mustang, Mr. Ramirez? Tomas stood, clearing his throat. Whispers more than a horse to this family, to this whole town now. He's gentle, loyal, and as much a part of Lila's healing as any of us. I'd like to request that he remain with us, as a guardian Mustang, free to roam the ranch, under my care. A murmur swept through the room, some skeptical, most supportive. The sheriff stepped forward, hat in hand. I'll stand by that. This animal's done more good than harm, and I'll personally see to his welfare. The judge nodded, gavel tapping once. So ordered. Lila Evans is to remain with her aunt and Mr. Ramirez. Miranda Evans will receive treatment, and Whisper, the Mustang, is formally recognized as a protected animal on the Ramirez Ranch. Relief spread through the family like sunlight breaking through clouds. Carla hugged Lila tightly. Tomas ruffled her hair, and even Miranda managed a small, hopeful smile. Back at the ranch, the mood was almost festive. Friends and neighbors stopped by with homemade bread and bouquets of wildflowers, laughter drifting through the open windows. Lila and Whisper were the center of it all. She ran through the fields with him, his mane flying, her laughter like a song. Sometimes she'd simply sit in the grass beside him, braiding more ribbons into his hair, telling him all her secrets. But healing wasn't just about celebration. It was also about work, patience, and small steps forward. Carla and Tomas enrolled Lila in therapy, bringing her to see a gentle counselor every week. They joined her in sessions, learning how to help her talk about the night in the forest, her fears, and her dreams. Whisper often waited outside the window, his calm presence a silent encouragement. Sometimes, when sessions were especially hard, the counselor would invite Lila outside to sit with the Mustang, teaching her how trust could be rebuilt, one gentle touch at a time. Miranda began her own journey. The first weeks in the treatment center were hard, but she called every Sunday, her voice steadier with each call. Sometimes she wrote letters, clumsy, honest, full of apologies and promises. Carla read them with Lila, never hiding the pain, but also never letting it define their future. Tomas and Carla worked the ranch together, their partnership growing stronger with every shared chore and every new challenge. Tomas would bring Lila to the barn before dawn, teaching her to feed the chickens or muck the stalls. She learned how to move quietly among the horses, how to listen for what wasn't said. Whisper was her shadow, always nearby, never needing a lead or a fence. Word of Whisper's story spread beyond the town. A reporter from the state capitol visited, taking photos of Lila and the Mustang running together in the dawn light. The girl who survived the storm, and the horse who saved her. The story inspired donations to the local animal rescue, and children from the area began writing Lila letters of their own, thanking her for being brave, for loving a wild animal, for showing them that even the scariest nights could end in hope. Carla watched it all with a kind of quiet wonder. She knew there would still be hard days, that healing would be a path, not a single step. But each morning, when Lila raced into the kitchen, muddy boots and bright eyes, Carla felt something she hadn't known in years, a certainty that they were right where they belonged. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of color and the air hummed with crickets, Lila stood at the fence, hand resting on Whisper's neck. "Do you think Mama will get better?" Carla knelt beside her, voice soft. "I think so, honey. And no matter what, you'll never be alone. Not as long as you have us." Lila nodded, the weight in her heart a little lighter. Whisper nickered, as if in agreement, and the three of them watched the last light fade, ready to welcome whatever came next. Summer deepened on the ranch, painting the fields in gold and green, wildflowers blooming along the fences where the grass met the road. The chaos of storms and courtroom battles faded into the rhythm of early mornings and long, slow afternoons. Lila found herself settling into a new routine, one that was gentler, but no less meaningful than anything that had come before. Every day began at dawn, when the air was cool and full of promise. Carla would knock softly on Lila's door, and together they'd tiptoe through the house so as not to wake Tomas, who always insisted he didn't need more sleep, but secretly cherished his extra hour in bed. They'd feed the horses and chickens, the sounds of hooves and quiet clucking grounding Lila in the world of the living, present, and safe. Whisper became her constant companion. The Mustang was no longer just a guardian. He was her shadow, her protector, her friend. He grazed nearby while Lila helped mend fences with Carla or learned how to braid hay ropes from Tomas. Sometimes the ranch hands would laugh and shake their heads, but they all knew that Whisper's presence meant peace for everyone. Even the other horses seemed calmer when he was near. Therapy became a part of their lives, too. Carla drove Lila into town every Thursday for her session with Dr. Benton, a kind woman with gentle eyes and a patient smile. The first few weeks had been hard. Lila had struggled to put her feelings into words, sometimes shutting down or turning away. But Dr. Benton never rushed her, always giving her the space to share when she was ready. One afternoon, after a session that left Lila's cheeks wet and her heart aching, Dr. Benton suggested something new. "Would you like to bring Whisper to our next session? Sometimes animals help us say what we're feeling, even when words are too hard." Lila nodded, her eyes lighting up with a spark that had been missing for months. The following week, Whisper waited in the grassy yard outside the clinic. Dr. Benton led Lila outside, and together they brushed the Mustang's mane, taking turns weaving ribbons and telling stories. Lila found herself talking about the storm, about her mother, about the fear that sometimes crept in at night and the dreams she wanted to have again. Whisper stood silent and patient, as if he understood every word. As the weeks passed, healing took root, not just for Lila, but for Carla and Tomas as well. They realized that their own wounds needed tending too. Inspired by Lila's progress, Carla and Tomas reached out to local foster families, inviting them to the ranch for afternoons with the animals. What started as a small gathering soon blossomed into something much bigger, a program for foster kids and animal-assisted therapy, open to anyone who needed a place to heal. On Saturdays, the ranch filled with children, shy, boisterous, wounded, and hopeful, each one finding comfort in the gentle rhythm of ranch life. Whisper was the star, patient with tiny hands and loud voices, a living legend in the eyes of every child who heard Lila's story. The ranch became known as a haven, a place where second chances were not just possible, but expected. Even the town began to change. At first, there were whispers of doubt, fears about safety and wildness, but those faded as more people visited the ranch, saw Whisper's calm, and watched the shyest children smile as they brushed his coat or led him quietly along the fence. The sheriff stopped by every week, always bringing apples for the Mustang and stories for the children. News crews occasionally returned, and local schools organized field trips so every child could meet the horse that saved a little girl, and the town that learned to open its heart. For Lila, the changes were slow but steady. She grew more confident each day, her laughter ringing out as she raced through the fields with Whisper at her side. At night, she no longer woke from nightmares. When she did, she'd slip quietly down the hall, find Carla, and crawl into bed beside her. Never turned away, never alone. The ache of her mother's absence softened with every visit, every letter, every phone call that proved Miranda was fighting her own battles and choosing recovery, not retreat. Carla and Tomas worked tirelessly to support the growing community around them. They built new fences, added a second barn for therapy sessions, and created quiet spaces where children could talk or simply sit with an animal. The ranch became a beacon, a place where wounds could be acknowledged, not hidden, and where healing was something you did together. Lila took pride in helping the other kids. She told her story when they asked, never shying away from the truth. "I was scared, and I thought I was alone. But Whisper stayed with me. He made me believe that things could get better, even when it felt impossible." Her words carried weight because everyone could see that she meant them. Over time, the town stopped seeing Lila as just the girl who'd survived a terrible night. They saw her as a leader, a survivor who turned her pain into hope for others. As summer faded into fall, the ranch felt more alive than ever. Whisper still ran wild and free, but he always returned at dusk, circling back to watch over the ranch, over Lila, over every lost soul who needed a place to belong. Carla watched it all unfold and felt a gratitude deeper than words. We're not just healing, we're growing. And in the gentle peace that settled over the land each evening, it was clear that hope, like the wildest of mustangs, could never be truly tamed, only cherished, protected, and shared. Years passed, and the world changed around the ranch. The pastures that once seemed endless now held new barns, more horses, and laughter drifting on the wind. Some things, though, remained unchanged. The feel of the morning air, the way the sun slipped through the oaks, and the echo of hooves pounding the earth at dusk. Lila grew tall and strong, her hair sun-bleached from summers spent outdoors, her face marked by the faintest freckles, and a smile that came easily. On her 17th birthday, she stood by the old corral fence, watching the herd graze as the light softened across the fields. Whisper was still there, older now, his mane more silver than white, but his eyes as deep and gentle as ever. She leaned on the fence, thinking back to the night that changed everything, the storm, the terror, and the wild mustang who stepped from the darkness to shield her. She thought of her mother, of Carla and Tomas, of all the broken pieces that slowly, patiently found their place again. That evening, the ranch hosted its annual picnic. Foster children chased dogs through the grass, their laughter ringing out beneath the trees. Tomas flipped burgers at the grill, and Carla wove through the crowd, a plate of cookies in hand. Whisper, the oldest and wisest horse on the ranch, wandered among the guests, accepting apples and pats from eager hands. He was a living legend, a story told and retold by those who had needed a hero, or simply a reason to believe. As dusk settled in, Carla gathered everyone around a crackling fire pit. It was tradition now for Lila to speak, a way to remind every child, parent, and friend that hope was not a fairy tale, but something you could choose every day. She cleared her throat, her heart full as she looked around at faces both new and familiar. I was just 6 years old the night my whole life changed, when my mom left me in the woods, and I thought I'd never be found. But someone did find me, not just Carla and Tomas, but Whisper. He wasn't just a wild horse. He was my protector, my friend, the reason I made it through that night. She glanced at Whisper, who flicked an ear as if listening. People talk about blood, about family being who you're born to. But I learned that family is who shows up. It's who stands with you when you're lost, who forgives your mistakes, who teaches you that broken things can be made whole again. Her voice trembled, but she pressed on. My mom got better, but it wasn't easy. Forgiveness took time, and sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is give someone another chance. Carla and Tomas didn't have to love me, but they did. And every child who comes to this ranch, every person who needs a home, is part of our family too. The fire crackled. A cool breeze rustled the grass. Lila took a deep breath, letting the peace of the moment settle over her. If Whispers taught me anything, it's that even the wildest hearts can learn to trust again. That healing comes from kindness and patience. That you don't have to be perfect to belong. You just have to show up and keep showing up. She turned to Carla and Tomas, her gratitude plain. Thank you for never giving up on me, for teaching me that home isn't a place. It's the people who stand beside you, no matter what. The group was silent for a moment, the truth settling deep. Then the children erupted into applause, and Carla gathered Lila into a tight hug. Tomas clapped her on the back, pride shining in his eyes. The night wore on, stories traded across the firelight, songs drifting into the stars. As the celebration faded, Lila slipped away to the pasture, where Whisper grazed in the twilight. She rested her head against his neck, closing her eyes. You kept your promise, old friend. You never left me. The Mustang nickered softly, pressing his nose to her cheek. For a moment, Lila remembered every night she had been afraid, every tear, every hope. She realized that the fear had shaped her, but so had the love, and that both were part of her story. From the edge of the field, Carla watched Lila and Whisper, tears in her eyes. She thought about all the children who'd found comfort here, about the way pain could become strength, about forgiveness and second chances. The years had not been easy, but they had been good. The ranch was thriving, a sanctuary for all who needed it, human and animal alike. Whisper, though slower now, was always at the center, his legend woven into every new beginning. One last time before going inside, Lila glanced back at the ranch, the house glowing with warm light. Friends gathered in laughter. She looked up at the stars and smiled. No one is ever truly lost, not when someone is willing to look for them. Whisper tossed his head. The red ribbon, faded now, but still bright in her memory, fluttering in his mane. Lila ran her hand down his neck, feeling the steady heartbeat that once kept her alive through the longest night. As the first stars blinked awake and the land settled into peace, Lila understood. Home wasn't a place you found. It was something you built, every day, with love, with forgiveness, and with the courage to let yourself belong. If this story touched you, share it, because somewhere out there, a child or a wild heart still waits to be found, and every act of kindness brings them one step closer to home.